Nothing that you do seems to go right. Nothing that you put your hand to seems to be working in a way that you thought that you designed it to work. It's not going right. And because everything around me is not going right, I am discombobulated because everything that I thought was up seems to be down, and everything that I thought was down seems to be popping back up. Have you ever felt like something in your life was missing and you weren't really sure how to fill in the gaps? There's an unknown writer of a quote, and he says, if you try to control everything and then worry about things you can't control, you're setting yourself up for a lifetime of frustration and misery. Have anybody in here been in a place of frustration and misery, or am I the only one that has been there in the place where I've tried to do everything that I could do, but nothing seems to work, and now I'm miserable and frustrated? I cannot be the only one who has been frustrated and miserable. What do you think life would be like if things were just easy? If it was easy like Sunday morning, the way Lionel Richie said that it would be. What do you think your life would be like if it was easy? If you never had to work hard for anything in your life, what do you think your life could be like? Would it be like a bowl of cornflakes on Saturday morning? Just easy like an egg over easy, just flowing freely, easy. Have you ever felt like you've got the spiritual wind knocked out of you? I can't be the only one that's ever got the wind knocked out of you. I used to ride bikes when I was a child, and every now and again I would fall down, and I was all right with scraping my knee, but the worst feeling in the world was when I would hit the steering wheel and I would knock the wind out of my chest and I couldn't get my breath. Have you ever felt like that spiritually, that you've gotten the spiritual wind knocked out of you? That's not a good feeling, especially when you're already frustrated and miserable, and here it is, I can't even catch my breath. God, make it stop. God, make it stop. When I was younger, I used to enjoy making pottery. That was one thing that I could do that would calm me down. I grew up in an era that was before children were really being diagnosed with ADHD. And I know from being in the profession that had I been younger now, I would certainly have been medicated as a child. So making pottery was something that I could do that would calm me down. So I would make my pottery, and my mother bought me a pottery wheel, and whenever I felt overwhelmed, I could go to my pottery wheel, and she had clay and everything that I needed so that I could be in a calm space. Now, when I would go to my pottery wheel, I would slice off just a small bit of clay because that's all I needed to work with. And I would wet my hands and make sure that the clay was pliable so that I could manipulate it. Anybody ever been manipulated by Christ? Christ, and because he had to water you down so that he could manipulate you. And I would deal with my clay, and I would begin to knead and work the clay. And when I got the clay to a certain consistency, I would roll it in a ball. You ever been rolled in a ball by God? You ever been rolled in a ball by God? I would roll my clay in a ball, and I would begin to take the clay as high as I could, and I would slam it down, and I would pick it back up, and I would slam it down again. You had the wind knocked out of you a few times. I would pick up the clay, and then I would slam it down again. Now, the reason why I would slam it down like that is because I needed to get the air bubbles out of the clay. I needed to get the air bubbles. Anybody had some bubble bursts in your life? You thought it was one way, but God bust your bubble and it turned out to be another way. I had to get the air bubbles out of the clay. Now, if there was air trapped in the clay, when I would begin to spin my clay on the wheel, my total design would be messed up because the air bubble would pop and then my structure would not be sound. And if that happened, then I would have to smash the clay and start all over again. The Bible reminds us in Isaiah 64 that God is the Father and we are the clay. He is the potter and we are his work, the work of his hand. Has anybody felt like God in this time is knocking the air out of you and getting you to a place where he can mold you and make you something into what you are not currently now? Anybody been there? But I've got the keys. I've got the keys. Now I know you're saying, what in the world does keys have to do with pottery, Reverend? You're just all over the place. You ain't been to school, so we ain't really expecting that much from you. Hello, lights and walls. That's what the pastor would say. You ain't been to school, so you. But it has a lot to do with the keys. I promise you, it has a lot to do with the keys. Now, throughout the Bible, there are several historical references to keys, right? But the largest one is that we need to understand that keys represent authority. Keys represent authority. If you're in the chat on Facebook, go ahead and type, keys represent authority. Keys represent authority. Now, in the Bible, keys are referenced 9 times in the book of Judges and in the book of Isaiah. Those are the foretellers of Christ, and they talked about the keys. Judges and Isaiah. In the book of Matthew and Luke are the commissioned of Christ, and they talked about the keys. They talked about the keys. And lastly, in the book of Revelations, the book of Revelation is what? God's revelation to man. And that book talks about keys. And you're saying, Reverend, I don't have any keys. What are you talking about? I left my keys in the car. My car is a push start and I don't even need the key to start, but you need some authority. You need some authority. I've got some keys for you today. And perhaps you're thinking today, I don't need any keys, but you do. See, whenever you are going to a new place, you're going to a new level, you need some keys to access the place where you are going. You need some keys to have total access. Have you ever been in your job place and you forgot your keys that day? And you have to spend your whole day asking and standing by the door until somebody else is ready to access, and then you can walk behind them, not in front, because if you would have had your keys, you could access, but you can't access if you do not have keys. And now it's not really a physical key, it's like a key card, but that key card gives you the access that you need. In the level that you're going in Christ, you need a key card. You need some access. And so God is telling us on this morning that he needs to give you some authority to go where you have not gone before in him. There are some places in Christ where God is saying access granted to you on this morning. Oh, if somebody would give God a shout, because he's giving you some access on this morning. And I know some of you are like, oh, but Reverend, I'm good. I don't need anything. I'm retired. I have everything that I need. God's saying, no. It's a spiritual access that you need. It's not to a physical place. How you gonna get to where you're going if you don't have access? Access. God has given me the keys. Now in Matthew 16, God talks about the authority that he has given to each and every one of his believers. Aren't you glad on today that God has given you the access? And have you ever been in a place where you have keys, but you're not sure if you have the right key on the key ring that will access the door that you're trying to access? Have you ever been in a place where you use somebody else's keys and you spent more time fumbling at the lock because you weren't sure which key of theirs could get into the door? But if you had your personal keys, you could go right to the key. Matthew says, I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. And whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. And whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Now that thing makes me scratch my head a little bit, but as I begin to question the text and as I begin to manipulate the text a little bit, God revealed some things to me, and I was just like, oh my goodness. Now, if we go back in the beginning of Matthew 16. Just a little bit up, we understand what God is saying. Jesus asked a pivotal question in verse 13. He asked a pivotal question, and if you've ever been on a job interview, and this is before you get your access key card, if you've ever been on a job interview and the job interview is just a formality. Have you been in that position where you knew you already had the position, but the interview was just a formality? You just needed to do the job interview just to say that you did it. They just needed to write it down that you actually went through the process. This is where we find Jesus and Peter. They're in a job interview before he gave him access. This is what he says. He says in verse 13, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, and he asked his disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? Who do people say the Son of Man is? And they said, some said that you are John the Baptist, and others say that you are Elijah, and still others say that you are Jeremiah, one of the prophets. Jesus said, yeah. But who do you say that I am? Have you ever been to a job interview and they asked you one pivotal question, and you knew that question was going to be the one that determined whether you got the job or not? Whether you got the job or not. This is the question, but who do you say I am? What about you? What do you say I am? And Simon Peter answered. Now, Simon Peter, not just Peter, but Simon Peter asked, who was this Simon Peter that asked? Simon Peter answered and said, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Now let's put a pin in it because Simon Peter answered. Let's talk about who Simon Peter is. Now we know who Peter is because later on it says, Peter, I will build my church upon this rock. That's what the word says. But who is this Simon Peter? Now, Simon, the name in the Greek biblically means shaky, flaky, like a leaf, never knowing whether you're to and fro. But it was Simon Peter who gave this definitive answer. You are the Messiah. That's what he said. You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Simon was very clear on this. See, all his life, Simon Peter never knew he would in and out, because that's what his name meant. Simon, shaky, flaky, like a leaf. Simon.